Hey.
Are we live?
I think so.
Yeah, well, it says end broadcast, so it must have started. You'll have to have a look on the page. Guys, how are we doing? This is take 2. We are now using a completely different app altogether, thanks to Dr. Chatterjee, actually, who gave us a heads up. But first of all, Dr. Chatterjee, huge welcome and thank you for coming on for this live, buddy. We really appreciate it.
Hey guys, thank you very much for inviting me. And Rongan, please, it's absolutely fine. It's a real pleasure to be on with you guys. And I've been watching what you guys have been doing for a number of years. And Keris, obviously, we've met a few times at various conferences. So super excited we've managed to get this in the diary.
Oh, yeah, we were actually saying beforehand that it kind of feels bizarre because I do feel like I've met you, because Keris has obviously spoken very highly of you since she met you that first time. And, we've been following you on social media since. And you're on the telly all the time. I can't get away from you, buddy.
Yeah, I know. God, it's one of those things. It's quite bizarre what's happened over the last few years in terms of how much prominence I now have in various aspects of the media, because there was no master plan here at all. There really wasn't. And I'm just genuinely very passionate, like you guys are, about helping people. And I see a lot of people around me, particularly as a doctor, I see a lot of people walking through the door who genuinely, I think most of the issue comes down to their lifestyles and what they're putting into their mouths. And this is not about blaming people at all, right? I think it's very important when we talk about people's lifestyles and nutrition that it's not about saying, hey, you did this to yourself. That's not what I ever say. That's not what you guys say. It's basically, the way we live modern life these days. I think we're doing many things that we just don't realize the impact they're having. And so I'm just passionate about getting that message out there to help as many people as possible.
What's amazing, I suppose, from our position as well, is that because you are a doctor, and this isn't information that like previously we've heard from doctors. So, and again, we often speak about the fact that it's not really possible for doctors to deliver this information in 10, 15 minutes. But it does carry more authority, definitely. So I know, I'm sure you found, well, you're a doctor, so you won't have found this, but when I speak to friends and family, they'll always listen to a doctor over me when it comes to kind of chronic disease and kind of very ongoing health conditions. So it's amazing because lots of them have kind of spoken to me and said, oh, there's a doctor on the telly and he's saying some things that you say about gut health and exercise. And yeah, so it's been amazing for us because it's kind of given us that backing and that authority that I think nutritional therapists, personal trainers have all needed. And of course you're on TV, so you kind of also walk through the practical steps, which is fantastic.
Well, it's great to hear that. And I've heard that from a lot of nutritional therapists and other healthcare professionals, personal trainers, that actually for a lot of people, it's been quite eye-opening to have a doctor speak the same language and preach the same things. And I've said for many years that actually a lot of our patients, I think, would arguably have been better seeing people like yourselves or people, other healthcare professionals than their doctor. And that's again, not anti-doctors. It's just, I know how we're trained. I've got the full gamut of medical training. I used to be a specialist. I've got an immunology degree. I've also trained as a GP. So I know what the training is that we get. And the sad reality is that we don't get given this information. And so we don't really recognize how important nutrition and lifestyle can be, not just for type 2 diabetes, right? But for a whole range of different conditions. And that's why I've created this new course to try and help teach doctors, at least, hey guys, just have a think about what we might be able to do here. It doesn't mean doctors have to know it all, but I'd love us to be able to, as we refer out to other specialists, I'd love us to be able to refer to you guys or to healthcare professionals or to nutritional therapists and say, hey, look, I think this migraine, actually, I think various things in your lifestyle might be contributing. I've got this NT who works here in the practice. I'd love you to see her for half an hour later this week to go through that. That's what I think would be fantastic.
That was actually going to be one of our questions to you, was if you can see kind of change on the horizon, because I know as a nutritional therapist, I will try and start a dialogue with doctors and ask for certain tests that I think would be helpful, like vitamin D or, kind of just complete blood count and things that will give an indication of nutritional status. And often I'm kind of met with some barriers sometimes, and I understand it because in their position, someone writing to me and kind of making suggestions, you know, when there isn't that kind of conversation or dialogue from the off, it's really difficult. But it'd be amazing, I think, to hear that there's going to be kind of a bit more of a joined up approach in future. I don't know if it's something that you know about that the healthcare system is looking at. We've heard about lifestyle coaches coming into GP surgeries. Is that something that you're kind of aware of?
I think Kerry's bringing up a great point. I don't know what the future holds. I'm very, very optimistic that things are going to change. I am an optimist by nature, and so that's my character anyway. But the reason I believe that things may well change now is that I think, you know, if people's health isn't enough of a reason to change, which it should be, I think the financial reality of the situation for the country, for the NHS, is likely to drive and force new solutions to come out. So, you know, there's so many ways to answer this question. This prescribing lifestyle medicine course that I'm hoping, well, not hoping, it is happening, that the Royal College of GPs have accredited. So, you know, at the end of January, course number 1 runs, where we're hoping to train 250 doctors. And actually, my hope is that that's not going to change everyone's health around the country. But if those 250 doctors can start to be thinking, oh, right, actually, we might be able to help this condition and this condition, that then means that they receive a letter from you, right? Potentially, they're going to be more open to having that conversation because it's not going to be as foreign a language as maybe it is currently. And, you know, some people say to me, oh, what are you really going to teach in one day? It's not enough. And it's kind of like, well, I know it's not enough, but I'm trying to start somewhere. It's not easy trying to create change. And this is a small step, a very significant step, I hope.
I think you've actually made a difference already, because in the last couple of weeks alone, I've had some GPs come back to me when I've written completely endorsing my recommendations. Where they've spoken to the patient when I said go gluten and dairy free for some immune issues, autoimmunity, that kind of thing. And they said that the GP has actually kind of suggested that's a good idea, and that some of the supplements like vitamin D would be helpful. And that's only happened in the last few weeks, but it's been amazing for me, because it's like, it's good for people that you're working with to hear it from the different sources, because it gives it that, you know, it's going to be, well, it's just more trustworthy information, I think, if they hear it from different people, all singing from the same hymn sheet, essentially. Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's so nice for me to hear that you're now, you know, having a little bit of that dialogue, because also the only way we're going to really help our population get healthier is by working together. It's not going to be just you guys. It's not going to be just doctors. It's not going to be just, you know, health coaches. You know, we need a joined up approach. That's the scale of the problem. And it's not only us. You know, we need schools on board. We need hospitals on board, because frankly, you know, modern life is just not set up for good health at the moment. You know, I'm a father. I've got 2 young kids, and I find it incredibly frustrating sometimes what goes on in schools. I can see someone called Chris Finney has actually I can't read it all, going into schools this afternoon to promote lifestyle. I'm so happy to hear stuff like that, because let's get the message out to kids, and that they will teach their parents, I often find.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know, honestly, like we've been saying this, to be fair, just give us a quick like elbow in the ribs there. We're sat very close together so we can fit into this tiny little screen here. But we've been saying for years, you know, like we just all need to collaborate a little bit more. And, you know, that goes for, you know, GPs, fellow personal trainers, nutritional therapists, rather than kind of it being seen as being in competition with each other all the time. Let's work together, you know, let's, you know, join forces, if you will, to kind of make the nation, the world, even kind of like a healthier place. And I think that's why your message has been so refreshing, you know, over the last kind of, I suppose, 12 to 18 months that we've been following you, is because for us, it's almost very preventative, as opposed to, oh, do this to help with that. It's more like, well, actually do this to prevent that even being a problem in the first place. And I think, you know, you mentioned earlier about the kind of financial strain that is currently on the NHS at the moment, and it's huge. And we just keep saying, yeah, but instead of making cuts here and cuts there, you know, the biggest cut of all is probably, you know, making it so less people actually come through the door because they're healthier. They don't actually need to go to a GP or an A&E department.
You're right. I mean, trying to put more money into the NHS to say we need to offer more appointments, things, right? I'm not against that. But I don't think that's the solution. The solution is we need to take the pressure off the NHS. We need to take a lot of this lifestyle-related illness, which I honestly think, on some days in general practice, I think 70, maybe 80% of what I am seeing is in some way related to people's lifestyles. And often they don't realize the choices they're making, the impact it's having. And you mentioned prevention. I'm very, very pro-prevention. There's no question. But the one thing I would say is that I've realized that lifestyle and nutrition, and Leah Butler-Smith here is saying about mindset as well, I absolutely agree. But lifestyle and nutrition, yes, can help us prevent getting a disease in the first place. There's no question. I think that's been known for a while. But I know that even if you have a disease, it can absolutely help you reverse that in many instances, or certainly get it a lot better. And that's a very, I think when you know this, and you guys clearly know this, it's quite obvious, but actually I don't think it's that well known that actually lifestyle itself can actually make your disease significantly better. And in some cases, not all, but in some cases, it can start the process of reversing it. And I find that incredibly empowering as a doctor, but also empowering for patients. So, and one thing I do want to add, because I do feel that a lot of people, certainly on my Facebook wall, express quite a lot of discontentment with the medical profession. And I understand that. But I genuinely do believe that the majority of doctors are trying to help their patients with the tools that they have been taught. Yeah. And we just need a bigger toolbox now.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that's a really important message to say. And coincidentally, Jill has just commented below saying, due to anxiety and being rejected by my GP, I don't feel able to ever set foot in the surgery ever again. And, I've not been to a GP surgery a huge amount of times in my lifetime, but I think, same with kind of any, organization, if you will, or kind of like customer facing, like day-to-day activity, every doctor is very, very different. And yes, they all kind of come from the same, school of thought, if you will. So I think that's a really, really cool message that you've put out there. It's just like having that bigger toolbox so that, because you could go into one GP surgery with the exact same symptoms, go into another one with the exact same symptoms, and potentially have two very different experiences with the particular GP that you've seen that day.
But also, I think it's, I was going to say, so I don't have anywhere near as many clients as a GP, and it's a very full-on role to have. You'll know more about this than me, obviously, but I can't imagine trying to see the volume of patients that they see across the week. Yeah. And it must be also for them hugely stressful. And I think that's why you're getting sometimes this kind of, maybe this feeling that they don't care. It's more that there's so many things that they have to get through in the day, and they're just being, maybe a bit more official about it. And they know that if they maybe open a dialogue with you, it'll be difficult to end that dialogue, especially with that very personal things.
I absolutely agree. Look, I see Carol Eddy is watching this. She says, as a GP, I completely agree. I think she put that around, well, Carol, maybe you could clarify what you were referring to there, but I think it was potentially around that most GPs are trying to help, genuinely trying to help, but everyone's got a different method of doing that. I think one thing that people probably aren't aware of is that there is such disillusionment and burnout in general practice at the moment. So GPs are genuinely feeling, the majority of them, and I've got plenty of friends who are GPs, and I don't know anyone that I can think of who doesn't feel overly stressed and burnt out by their job. That's impacting their own health. It's then impacting their own relationships with, let's say, their husband or their wife and their kids. And, it's a huge problem. And in the GP forums, everyone's talking about stress and burnout and about wanting to leave general practice. And that clearly doesn't make it easier for patients who feel they're not getting the help that they want. But I think, workload is one of the reasons why doctors are feeling so frustrated. There's no question. But I think the other thing is because I think the toolbox we have is limited. And I think the tools we were taught at medical school are very good for what we used to see in the NHS 30, 40 years ago, a lot of acute disease. I don't think the tools that we've been taught are actually that good for a lot of chronic diseases. And therefore, I think there's a frustration that we're medicating patients, they're coming back because they're not feeling better, And I think, therefore, that contributes to GPs feeling quite burnt out, as they feel, you know what, I'm just not getting this patient better. I don't know what to do. They keep coming back. And in a busy day where sometimes you're seeing 40, 45 patients, it can be a bit overwhelming. And so, I think we just got to be quite careful. I think the situation is very imperfect at the moment. Yeah. And it's just an issue about, let's work together collaboratively. And one thing I would say is I would like my colleagues to be more open-minded to things than often patients report back to me. I think many doctors really are open-minded, but I think there's quite a few also who feel, if I wasn't taught about it, it doesn't exist and it's not very good. And I really don't have any sympathy with that way of thinking at all. I would have been a bit more charitable about it a few years ago, but actually I don't have any sympathy with it, because we have to be aware now that if you're honest and you look at how many patients you've truly helped that day, I think if you're really honest as a GP, you'd be like, you know what, I've not actually really helped. I've helped, I may have medicated symptoms, but for many of them, I really haven't had the time or knowledge to do what I really wanted to do with them. And I think that's incredibly frustrating for a lot of them.
I mean, one thing I actually say to because people are kind of writing down things that they're struggling with at the moment, and one thing that I often say to them is if they've not had much success with a GP, sometimes with some of these issues, especially autoimmune chronic diseases that are going to take a long time, they're not going to be resolved in 10 minutes and one prescription. It's almost better to see it as a blessing in disguise, which it doesn't feel like that initially. But the changes, if you go away and educate yourself through all of your materials and whatever, there's lots of great sources now. If you go and make those changes, you stay accountable because you know that you're not well and you have to do this. And then you go on a journey that pretty much transforms every aspect of your health. And that's also things like your mood, which kind of talks about mindset. You get into a routine and it just does become a kind of lifestyle for you. But then you go off and you do, you're kind of the best version of yourself. And this is the message we keep trying to give people. You go off and you might want to change your job and do all sorts of other cool things because it's become a platform for you having better energy, better mood, more motivation, getting rid of pain, which is obviously, it's depressing and it's a barrier to doing the things that you love. So I often say to a lot of people, just whatever it is that you're working through right now, it's going to be a blessing because you're going to get these tools together and change your life probably completely at some point.
Absolutely. And look, you guys have written some fantastic, you've got good stuff on your website, you've got the books. And I, as a GP, look to refer people to, because like in NHS general practice, right? One thing I always say is every doctor I've taught about lifestyle medicine or functional medicine says the same thing. Once you get it, you can't go back. Once you know it, you can't pretend that you don't know this newfound knowledge. Because ethically, on some level, you became a doctor to help people. So the way I manage it in the NHS, or do manage it when I'm doing NHS days, and it's very hard, but I'll set the scene in those 10 minutes, which often becomes 15 minutes, and I'll say, look, maybe you can look at this book or this blog, or try this dietary change, and then I'll give you a follow-up in 2 weeks' time. And I often give them a double appointment, so it's 20 minutes. And I say, you go and try that, write down any problems you're having, make a diary of how you're feeling, then we can discuss it. And that's how I try and leverage the time that I have. It's not perfect, right? I'd much rather have an hour with them or have a nutritional therapist, in the practice to go and refer them to. But this is how I try and make it work within the NHS. But it can be challenging. And I think it's interesting, there's quite a few, I think, GPs who are on this conversation who are commenting, and it's really interesting. A lot of them, they're all saying they do want to make a difference, but that's why they became doctors. That's why a lot of people become GPs, because they've got that human touch. They want to communicate with people. They don't want to be in a hospital necessarily with lots of tests and investigations and not having that continuity. But the way we're having to practice these days, it's incredibly frustrating. It really is.
Actually, it's interesting that you responded to Carol Eddy. She's been working with us for years, and she has completely overhauled her health and as a GP, and lost a lot of weight after a patient made a comment. I'm sure she won't mind me saying a patient made a bit of a rude comment to her and said, I was going to ask about weight loss, but you've clearly got a problem yourself. So Carol had told us that and went off and changed her entire lifestyle, does exercise, really, really good nutrition. And she has asked me frequently, where could she go and get some kind of background information to expand her repertoire? So it's great that you're launching your course, because I hope Carol will be jumping on that next year, because we've kind of said, wouldn't it be great to have Carol Eddy now as our doctor, because she's going to know all that background knowledge about lifestyle information, but she's done it all herself. So she can walk people through and empathize.
It's a great story to hear about Carol, and hi Carol, for you watching, well done for all that. That's fantastic to hear. But I would say that, I find a lot of doctors who are currently this way inclined have had a personal reason, either in their own health or with a family member's health, that's forced them to confront the limitations of what we have. And I actually got a text from a local doctor last night. I've not had a chance to respond yet, so if you're watching, I'm really sorry. But basically, he was just saying, look, can you help me with my son's eczema? We just can't get him better. We've seen the dermatologist. Conventional medicine is just not helping him. And this is the thing for me. This is the crux of the matter. When the tools that we've been taught are working, there's no reason to think outside the box. There's no reason to think, oh, there could be another way. But when the tools that we've got are not working, and let's be very clear, a skin condition is an external manifestation of something that's going on inside the body.
Yeah.
Okay. Putting a cream on is symptom suppression, and that can have value, right? That can absolutely have value. It's not about one way or the other. Often I see patients with skin conditions, if they're using steroid creams to make their life bearable, but at the same time, I'm trying to fix the inside, so hopefully they won't need it long term. But the point is that I think I want to get to the stage where doctors don't have to wait for a personal crisis to switch sides, as it were. It's not really about switching sides, about just opening up our toolbox. I'd love it to be standard for medical students, but it's one step at a time. Just getting a course like this accredited by the Royal College of GPs was a huge amount of hard work, and it's incredibly rewarding. As I said, there's so many positive comments, but quite a few negative ones saying it's not enough, you need to do more, you shouldn't be doing it in London. And it's like, I'm kind of thinking, if you knew what we had to go through just to get to this stage, I wish we could roll it out. I wish it could be free of charge for everyone across the country. But you know what? We're not there yet. I'm hoping that this snowballs. Time will tell.
On that subject, how do you manage? Because I looked, I'm always watching your Instagram and look at your Facebook page, and you are absolutely here, there, and everywhere traveling. How are you managing to look after your own health within all this? Is there kind of key things that, like, non-negotiable things you do every day to make sure that you're still, because obviously to be able to do this and kind of enjoy it and feel energized requires you to be following what you're kind of preaching to people?
Yeah, Kerry, I think that's a really good question. And I'll answer that a couple of ways. the first thing to say, and as you know, I think already, is that I really talk about, with every patient and every lecture, I talk about, I talk about 4 pillars of health, right? And like, I can make it 6 or 7 or 8, there's so many sub-fractions of that, but I try and keep it at 4 to keep it simple for people. Food, movement, sleep, and relaxation. And I personally believe that we should try and give, pay attention to each area. Maybe not be perfect in one area, but make sure we pay attention to each area, because I think that rounded approach leads to long-term health outcomes. So if I then apply that with my own life, my food is pretty much always dialed in. Okay, I very, very rarely go off plan with my diet. It's a whole food diet. I personally don't do very well with either gluten or dairy, so I never touch them, by and large, when I can. I'm not perfect. I'm human. Sometimes I'm in situations where it's very, very challenging, but I've got, about 4 or 5 years now, I feel great on it. So it's not about following a fad diet or anything. It's like, I love feeling good. So I know the foods that make me feel good. I'm totally in tune with my body. When I go off that, I don't feel good. I get sinusy. I can't sleep so well. I feel tired. So for me, that's the motivation. And that's what I try to do with every patient, is get them to feel better, because I believe that nobody is going to follow our advice long-term if they're not feeling a change. I want people to make the changes because they're feeling better, so they want to, not because I told them to. So my food is dialed in. Sleep, I do prioritize getting to bed early. It's something I will switch off. I won't stay up late working. I used to, but I will not do that anymore because I know I'm much better when I get to bed early. Now I will wake up early, and it's not uncommon for me to wake up at 5 or 5:15 because I've got 2 young kids and I like a bit of time to myself in the morning. So I get up early and I'll sort of come down. I'll try and do maybe 10 minutes of meditation. I'll try and put some coffee on. It's a whole process and a ritual for me where I'll weigh out the coffee. And as my coffee is brewing for 4 minutes, and I time it as well for 4 minutes, I'll do some movement exercises, some particular movements that are designed to get my body in the right shape for the rest of the day. These are exercises I go into a lot of detail on in my books. They really help me get rid of my back pain. And I've done a lot of work with someone called Gary Ward, who I think is one of the most revolutionary thinkers in movement mechanics. He's really shaking things up. And Gary collaborated with me on a chapter to give people some actionable exercises. And they just take a few minutes. So my movement tends to be dialed in. My sleep does my food. The thing that I struggle with out of those 4 pillars the most is the relaxation or stress piece. Right?
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing for me. And that's the one I'm fighting with because honestly, what goes, the switch off tends to go. And I know I shouldn't be, and I'm pretty good, but the only way I can go around the country, travel so much, and still have a family life is by looking after myself. And I also feel, again, I'm not saying I expect this of every doctor at all. I mean, I think people are individuals to do what they want, but I feel if I'm going to go out and preach this message around the country, around the world, I kind of feel I need to live and breathe it as well. I think there's just much more integrity for me personally if I'm doing these things. So, this morning I did meditate for 10 minutes. I shake it up. I used the Calm app this morning, CALM, the Calm app. And it just totally got me in it. I don't look at my emails for a good hour in the morning. I'll try not to switch on my laptop. And if my phone goes on, it'll be in airplane mode for a good hour because I don't want to start getting this bombardment of information. So, I do try and walk the talk, basically. I could go into a lot more detail, but I'm sure people probably don't want to hear everything about my everyday life.
I'm sure we're like, what's breakfast? What's lunch? What's dinner?
At some point, I'm sure we could go into all these things, but I do live and breathe it. I probably eat in a very similar way to you guys, I'm sure.
Find as well that makes advising people, like we when we're helping people, because you've done it yourself and you've done it when you're busy, you've done it when you travel, you just have a stack of resources then, so it's a lot easier. And that's why social media is a great thing for that, because you can just start to live out your day a little bit at a time, give people that insight. That's what we do, but like you, we also get a bit overwhelmed at times. And it's interesting, I was doing a similar thing of not turning my phone on for an hour, and that's gone out the window because it's coming up to Christmas, we're quite busy. So you've just reminded me to start doing that again, actually.
It's the thing, right, that when we're time pressed, that's the thing that goes, I find. That's the thing that, and for a lot of people, sleep also goes. I'll stay up late. That's one thing it's amazing, I used to be able to stay up really late and get up early and still function, or I thought I was able to function. Yeah. But since I started prioritizing my sleep, and to be very, very clear, I think pretty much every single person in society these days, unless they are trying to prioritize their sleep, I think they're likely to be not prioritizing it, because we've got infinite temptations now that we didn't used to have. Yeah. So I think sleep is something, unless you are actually actively saying, well, I need to make a conscious effort to get my sleep in, I think for most of us, it just doesn't happen. And I actually find, look, I give the pillars equal priority, and I could talk about each one and say it's the most important, because I want to say that, when you sleep better, everything else is easier. Your food choices are easier. You don't crave that sugar. You want to be more active. But as I say, 3 out of the 4 pillars are pretty much dialed in for me, pretty much all the time. But it's taken me 5 years to get to this point. It wasn't overnight.
Well, I think that's the key message, because what you just said there, we always say, don't we? Like, we always say that, if if something's in place, it tends to generally have a natural knock-on effect to everything else anyway. So rather than kind of trying to do everything, you know, just by changing one thing can often be what kind of gets that positive ball rolling. But equally, like, we're always trying to stress that, you know, because people always say, oh, it's all right for you, you know, like you kind of like, you work for yourselves, you've got all the time in the world, you've always been fit and healthy. And we're like, no, that's not actually the case at all, you know. And we're quite open about kind of like our experience with our own kind of like health and nutrition, et cetera, and the battles that we had, and how we overcome them. And I think people are kind of quick to just think that you've kind of always had it easy. But like you say, you know, it's taken you a good 5 years to kind of like get to where you are now.
And I'm still tempted, right? Sometimes I'm not actually that tempted with wheat or dairy anymore. I can, you know, it really just doesn't tempt me. But sweet things, you know, if I'm tired, if I'm stressed.
Like what? You've got to name them.
What would I be tempted by? I'm just trying to think now. Like, you know, actually a lot of these sweet, healthy bites that have got no gluten, have got no dairy, but they've got a ton of sugar in, even though it's coconut sugar. Yeah. You know, I'm tempted by that stuff, but I've also got the taste for this stuff from when I was a kid. You know, and one thing that's also an extra motivation for me is because my kids are young, I want to be the example around them. I think trying to get my kids to eat healthily when I'm stuffing my face with unhealthy food, frankly, it's never going to work. Kids are just like sponges and they absorb what you're doing, how you're doing it. And so we make a big deal about sitting around a table, right? We sit around a table every night that I'm back. We sit here. We often put candles on. You know, it sounds a bit hippie, but you know what? It really has a beautiful atmosphere. Everyone feels quite calm. And actually, we play this game that Charles Poliquin, I don't know if you know the strength coach, Charles Poliquin.
I did biosignature course years ago.
Yeah, so when I went, sort of first time I met Charles a couple of years ago, we went out for dinner and he was telling me about this game that he always would play with his daughter every day before she went to bed. And it's 3 questions. And those 3 questions are what we play, my wife, myself, and my 2 kids. You know, most evenings we play it. And it's just a fantastic way of engaging everyone. And the 3 questions are simply this, you know, what have you done today to make somebody else happy? What has somebody else done to make you happy? And what have you learned today? And, you know, such a simple thing has such a profound impact on our sort of mental outlook. We feel good afterwards. We've connected with each one, even if we're all busy. We've learned a little bit about each other, and it's a small thing, but you know, it translates to big health outcomes. Little things like this.
I think it's amazing.
How old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
My son is 7, and my daughter's about to be 5, and she's very excited about her 5th birthday. So 7 and 5, let's say.
So, you know, how would you say they've responded to like some of the changes that, I mean, I know they're very young, but, you know, I suppose a big question that we often get through our page and, you know, in our kind of support email is people with young children, and that, you know, being like a huge barrier into the foods they can prepare, because I think a lot of people are finding that they've got to prepare a certain meal for them, but then they've got a slightly rebellious partner who's like, I'm not eating that. And then they've got kids that are like, I'm not eating that. And they've kind of got this big dilemma of kind of trying to prepare food that everyone's going to enjoy. You know, what kind of barriers did you have, if any, you know, from your kids, your partner?
So that is incredibly challenging. There's no 2 ways about it. It's an incredibly challenging situation. So I don't know if you call it luck or not, but for my daughter, for example, we were, you know, as I say, she's almost 5. We had shifted our mindset before she was born. So she's grown up with this, right? So actually with her, it's not actually that hard at all, because that's all she's known. And just to be really, really clear, if that's all your kids have known, that's all they want, right? If they love the taste of vegetables, if that's what they feel is a natural taste, if they feel that a sweet treat is a ripe peach rather than a packet of Haribos, you know what? Then that does it for them. You know, or, you know, treats for them are like slices of mangoes. Oh, we're going to get the mangoes today, right? So it's all relative. But, you know, for me, and I know you know some of my personal story, and I won't go into it all now, but essentially my son, when he was 6 months old, he was very unwell, and he nearly died, actually. And that really was the incident that shifted my mindset. I was moving that way anyway, but that incident really shifted things for me. And so since he has been about 12 or 18 months, he's been eating this way. So he's pretty much used to it. I think when it gets harder is when kids are older, when they're used to all the kind of modern junk and sweet stuff that's out there. I think it's incredibly challenging. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Even if you make one small change, right? I think that is key. That you know, it's a process. It takes time. You know, instead of sweet treats, what about some jars with some like colorful dried fruit in it and seeds and nuts and things that look visually attractive? That could be like an intermediate treat. You know, that could be a way of just transitioning. Or what we do with my kids, even my daughter who's 4, you know, we engage them in the kitchen. So she'll cut mushrooms if we're going to make like an omelette or something. She'll cut them. My son has been chopping for 2 or 3 years, and you know, I posted a photo recently, and I granted it wasn't the best photo. My wife said that wasn't the right photo to post, but he had a big knife, right? But you know what? I'm okay with that because he's been doing it for 2 years. He knows how to use a big knife.
Yeah.
And so the other morning, he chopped up 7 really hard apples for me before I sort of stewed them in the morning. And that's how we do it at home. Now, I get it. It's not easy for everyone. Right? Yeah. It's not easy for everyone. But just find one thing and start there, and don't expect perfection, and try and model that behavior for your child if you can. And I know that's hard. I'm not talking down to people. I get it. It's really, really difficult. But you know, maybe have a conversation with them, you know, in terms of what different foods are doing. So, you know, I don't know. I think we're probably a little bit over the top here. I don't know, you know, like last night at dinner time, no, 2 nights ago at dinner time, I was like, okay, kids, right, what are the top 4 foods for gut health? Right, that's the kind of crazy games we play. And even my daughter's like, leeks, onions, and my son really wants to answer. I said, no, let your little sister answer. And she goes, artichokes, garlic. I'm like, yeah, that's it. And what do they do? Well, they're good for my gut bacteria, aren't they, Daddy? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. So, you know, but I think it's important because this is what I get up every day, and my mission, right? What gets me out of bed is I want to transform the way people view their health. And if I can't do that in my own house, then you know, I kind of feel it's slightly disingenuous to go around the country and speaking about it. So we do live and breathe it.
It's interesting as well. This isn't just, I think kids, when we first started out and started to talk about cooking from scratch and the importance of it for nutrition, we were actually in central London running loads and loads of kettlebell classes, and a big base of our clients didn't cook anymore and didn't know how to. And so the reason we started doing recipes was actually because we said, right, okay, minimal skills, minimal ingredients, but good quality ingredients, and emphasize the why. So there's always a why in all our books. But the reason, and we're often kind of asking people about, you know, their favorite foods and what do you miss when you go on to kind of more of a whole foods diet, and then we try and develop recipes that will replicate it. But actually, you know, some really traditional dishes like shepherd's pie and things like that, you know, you can fill with vegetables. It's stuff we have been eating for years and years, but we've just become a kind of a culture of convenience. And so that was kind of why we started out. So it wasn't just even, I mean, it's amazing that you're getting your whole family involved, but we almost found that adults were losing that skill and certainly didn't understand the value of that skill of cooking, including us at one point, I think. And that's why we kind of, once you come on a whole foods diet, you've got to learn to cook, basically, haven't you?
Absolutely. And you know what, so you just made me think about the Instagram photo I posted last night. So I've just started filming a new BBC One show on health. People are asking me, this is not Doctor in the House. So it's a different show. That I think it's a really good one about giving people a lot of information. And I got well late. I was quite tired. It was like a 12-hour day. And I was very lucky. I came home. My wife had, you know, there was dinner left over. And I just, you know, shoved it in a plate. And I thought, actually, this is quite interesting. And a lot of people commented because I had white rice in. Okay. And I, you know, people, you know, is that healthy? And I think this is one of the issues is, you know, is it healthy or is it unhealthy? So I know for me, right, I don't do well on gluten or dairy. I just don't. I don't do well at all. I get mucus, I get sinusy. White rice for me is not really a problem. I don't have it all the time, but I do have, you know, I often will have it, but I do well with it. And I'm very insulin sensitive. I work out. You know, I look after myself. That's not an issue for me at all. And I think that surprised a few people. But what, you know, one thing I try and do on my Instagram is more and more now is I'm trying to show what's real. What you know, I think on Instagram it can be so manicured sometimes on some people's feeds that, you know, a few of my friends actually last week texted me saying, mate, you are looking exhausted on your photos. That's out of concern, and I was exhausted. But I thought, no, what, I'm going to post when I'm tired, because this is real life. I'm not going to touch it up. I'm not going to, you know, that's, you know, when I go to the gym, I'm sweaty, right? I'm going to post that photo, because sometimes I look on Instagram and I think, actually, wow, yeah, I don't look like that in the gym. I don't look as though I've just had my hair done and stuff. And again, I'm not criticizing anyone who does that. I'm genuinely not. But I'm trying to show, I think, or I'm certainly going to try to, what is real life for me? What does that look like? You know, I'm tired sometimes. I've worked too much, right? But then this week I'm trying to get back on track. So anyway, I'm just sort of sharing some insights.
Yeah, but to me, honestly, mate, this is phenomenal, because we talk about this all the time. Is that? Oh, that was I thought, who's phone? You know, we talk about this all the time, and like, we love social media because it's kind of allowed us to connect with so many more people and help so many more people around the world. You know, we've got clients in New Zealand, we've got clients in Dubai, you know, and things like that. Could never do that without social media. Like, you know, it's an amazing thing. But you mentioned Instagram, and Instagram's a real kind of I've got a real love-hate relationship with Instagram, because I love it because, again, it's an opportunity to share your message and help people. I also follow some really inspirational people on there as well. However, as you say, for a lot of people, they showcase like I always say, like, they're showing their highlight reel. You know, it's all the good stuff. It looks really amazing. It looks perfect to a degree. And I think the problem we're kind of facing now is people are kind of comparing themselves to just unrealistic scenarios, you know, because no one's life is perfect, as you say. Sometimes we don't get enough sleep. Sometimes we are ill, we're tired. Sometimes we skip the gym. Sometimes we eat a tub of Ben & Jerry's. That's me more so than Keris. But and like you, we share that because we're like, you know, we are normal people. We have the same barriers. Things aren't always plain sailing. So I'm really, really pleased you said that, mate.
Yeah, and I think Instagram is one for me. I've got a love-hate relationship with it as well, actually. And my problem, and actually, you know, I was in California recently, and I stayed with a friend of mine who was great. And he actually said, look, Rongan, you know what? You should be posting every day, because you're in a position where you can communicate with people and you can help engage people in change. So he said to me, you've got a responsibility to post regularly, because you might be able to help create change. And that shifted things for me, because I would go hot and cold on Instagram. I'd post maybe 3 times 1 week, then I'd go off it for 2 weeks. I didn't even want to go on the app, because I'm like, I just want some downtime. But
also, you just said about the very similar to you, our meals don't look Instagram worthy often. You know, they're hearty family meals, just served up. And
you sometimes tell me off that. You're like, you can't put that on Instagram. It's terrible.
I'm like your wife.
I'm keeping it real.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing, you know, and then you know, everyone says you've got to be on Insta stories, you know, and actually people have noticed that for me, often, if I'm at home, nothing happens on my Insta stories quite often. And if I'm in London for a couple of days, suddenly I'm on it all the time. And that's because actually I don't want to model the behavior to my children that every time something happens, oh, daddy's got his phone out and he's taking a photo of it and putting it on, you know, because then they'll grow up thinking actually that's normal. So I'm very, very conscious. You know, for me, my family is top priority, and, you know, it's about doing the right thing for my kids. First and foremost, and my wife, of course, and my you know, close family. But I kind of, you know, because people say, oh, you need to be posting more, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do that in front of my kids necessarily, because then they see that. So I struggle with it just as much as anyone.
One question I was going to say as well is, I've just seen it come up on some of the comments. So I've just started lecturing in nutritional therapy at the college I trained at, which is CNM, and a lot of there's a huge vegan influence across nutrition at the moment. I've seen it, just as I'm lecturing, and also we see it online a lot. And I love aspects of a vegan diet, and we kind of, we're kind of a mixture, aren't we? We say we're kind of a bit of everything, because we eat some vegetarian meals, some vegan meals, and we have a little bit of good quality meat, fish, eggs. And one thing that I often speak to anyone interested in health about is to say it's more about, like you've kind of mentioned, it is the 4 pillars anyway. But if you're kind of making that decision about whether to go down a paleo route or a vegan route or vegetarian, my advice is kind of to actually familiarize yourself with micronutrients and essential, so vitamins, minerals, and your healthy fats. And then you can make a decision about where you want to draw those from. But also, like you've kind of mentioned with your patients, you often say, but keep reflecting on whether it's right for you, because we know that genetically, some people are good on a vegan diet, some people are not so good. But because a few people are asking about it on the comments, I thought it'd be great to get your take on, again, this is social media creating this notion of there being one perfect diet that we should all follow, which we don't. We try and get people to personalize it if they can.
Yeah. Well, a lot of very happy to share my thoughts on that. And you say about this one perfect diet, and obviously you guys have written a book, but in the process of writing my book, you have to really condense your thoughts and compress them and really kind of figure out how you want to say it. And I refer a lot in my upcoming book about there is no one true diet. It's a total myth that we're going to find that one true diet. I really don't think it exists. And even if you look at these blue zones around the world where a lot of people are living, with high rates of longevity without much chronic disease, they've all got different diets. I was very lucky in June to speak to the guy who coined the term blue zone. It's called Michel Poulain. He's a Belgian researcher. And we actually went around and visited some of the centenarians in Guernsey. It was an incredible experience for me. And he said, you know what? They all eat differently. Some of them eat a lot of meat. Some of them are vegetarian. But what was consistent is pretty much all their diets are minimally processed. They're local, they're in season, and they're cooked from fresh, right? So I think that's a pretty good template to start from. Is that seems to be consistent with the majority of healthy diets around the world. Now, if you have an ethical preference around food, who the hell am I as a other human being to actually be derogatory towards you? And it really annoys me on social media. I find it so frustrating, the animosity towards different people who choose different choices. I mean, when is that acceptable in any other aspect of life to call, oh, you're on a fad diet because you feel better on something? I find it ridiculous that some of us are so arrogant that we feel we can talk down to other people who are making a different choice on their diet. So that frustrates me a little bit. But look, if you want to be vegetarian or vegan, right, I will respect that. And I will try and make you aware of healthy choices around that. So you guys know as well as I do that being vegetarian could be very, very unhealthy with, vegetarian pizzas, cookies, crisps, chocolate. These are all vegetarian. Or it could be, colorful, lots of vegetables, lots of healthy fats, lots of avocados, lots of nuts. And the two very different things. So the term vegetarian or vegan, yes, it's a way of eating, but it can be done so many different ways. Now, I don't purposely suggest my patients to go vegan necessarily. I do have a lot of patients who tend to do a little bit better, certainly in my experience, and I know this is an emotive subject for many. So as a doctor looking after their health, sometimes I find they do better with some animal products in their diets if they're good quality. But I've got to say, some people do incredibly well on vegan diets, particularly if they have gone from a highly processed junk food Western diet. If you go to eating a healthy vegan diet, that's going to be an improvement. So, and I also think, and this is, without keep coming back to this 4 pillars, I think that your nutrition also depends on those other aspects. So how is your sleep quality? How is your stress, what your stress levels like? What's your movement like? I think that also determines what diet you need. So, a bodybuilder is going to need a different diet from a pregnant mother, right? Yeah. So it depends on your goals. And actually, my wife's dad, his family, a huge part of his family, Jane, and they live in Nairobi in Kenya. So I went to visit them. We all went to visit a few years back. What was really interesting, Jane people are vegans. And I watched them out there, and it was really interesting. They're very quiet. They do a lot of meditation. They're very, they're quite introspective. They don't go off and, pump iron at the gym. Their culture and their lifestyle, from what I observed, I was only there for 10 days, right? So I'm not claiming to be an expert. From what I observed, I thought, you know what? I can kind of see how your diet is kind of working for how you guys are living your life. And I found that incredibly interesting for me. It was a huge learning point for me, that to go, wow, so maybe that works in that context. And I think that's something we can all possibly think about.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, a big thing that I've noticed is kind of like, because like you, I'd like to think well, I'm pretty certain that we share very, very similar beliefs. Hence the reason why, like our message is very similar, and hence the reason why we got you on the show. Of course, that'd be weird, wouldn't it, if we just disagreed with everything?
That would control a bit. I'm working a bit in telly now. They like controversy, I've noticed, in television.
Oh, they love a bit of that. Gosh, yeah. There won't be any here, buddy. Don't worry. You're safe here. But we've noticed, like, because if you look at, like, we're big fans of like getting plenty of veg into your diet, as are you. We often try and get people to try and include some form of like, fruit or vegetable at every single meal, good quality protein, etc., as a template, as a guide. It's not a set in stone, this is how you must eat for optimal health. But like you say, it's a good place to start, and you can adapt it along the way. But just as something we've noticed is, like, when you speak to, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents about how they used to eat, it's quite similar to a degree, meat and 2 veg, potatoes, etc. But a big thing that we've noticed, and you may agree, is it's not necessarily just what people are eating, it's how much people are eating, and for us, we feel like, portion control has kind of gone out the window for a lot of people, even on the good stuff, so I'm not necessarily just referring to bad foods here, or, whatever you want to class as a bad food. But as an observation, I always say, if you go to like a coffee shop that sells cake, if you ever see like an old couple, in the corner, the amount of times you'll see them, they eat half their cake and then they wrap the other half up in a bit of tissue, they whack it in their handbag or something like that to either take home to their partner or to have another day. Like, I mean, I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. I'd scoff it down my face. You're right. I think it's a really, really good point. That
food industry as well. I think that the food industry, in terms of food to go, so your coffee shop culture and things like that, I have to fight to get a small coffee and a small tea. In any coffee shop, they go, yeah, but a large is just the same price. And you're like, I just want a small cup of tea. Like, it's
I heard that in America recently. They're small. It's like a large. I've become a bit of a coffee snob over the last couple of years. Actually, I think I've transferred addiction maybe to sugar onto coffee, which I'm not saying is a good thing, guys, at all. But I don't want this big dilute black liquid in this big. I want a nice small concentrate coffee that tastes like coffee. And again, she said to me in the shop, it's the same price. I'm like, I know, I'll pay the same price. I don't want a discount. That's fine. But can you just make it small, please? And I think, one way, I'm sure you guys get asked this a lot as well, is, why are foods now causing so many problems when they weren't in the past? I mean, I'm sure you must have been asked that question several times, because there is this growing rate of intolerances and allergies or perceived allergies. And I think there's 2 reasons for this. I think the food has changed. So, I love in Michael Pollan's Cooked documentary series on Netflix, he talks about bread 10,000 years ago. It used to be 3 ingredients. It used to be, flour, salt, and water. And now, you'll struggle to find a bread in your supermarket with under 10 ingredients. So the food has changed. Right, that's the first thing. But I also think our defenses against that food, so our gut health, our microbiome, that also is a lot weaker now because of lots of antibiotics, pollutants in the environment, junk food, all these things that start to decimate our microbiomes and our gut health. So you've got this double whammy where the food is, it's a bit like, the attackers are stronger now, the foods are stronger, and our defense system is weaker. So on so many levels now, I think that's why we're struggling. And I have found that with some people, foods that they're struggling with now, today, a year on, as their gut health gets stronger, they can start tolerating a lot more foods than they could have done. And I've certainly found that myself as well. And that's incredibly empowering, I think, for people.
It's interesting you raise that point, because I get a lot of emails about food intolerance tests, and people tell me about a journey through the doctor's surgery where they're being referred for more intolerance tests, environmental and food. And maybe their intolerances are basically building, so more and more are developing. And like you, I go back and explain the problem isn't that, all these things are suddenly, an enemy to the body. It's that your defense system needs fixing, and we start with the gut. And most people, if they're kind of unaware of fit food and what we do, or haven't seen you talking on the TV, they're completely surprised by that. And no one's mentioned it to them at that point in time that, and again, this is fixing the gut is nutrition, it's lifestyle, sleep is also a factor, relaxation, so it's a combination of things, and some supplements where needed to kind of help the process. But so a lot of my gran said to me the other day, I think it's a nonsense, all these intolerances. They didn't exist in my day, but I see that they're not a nonsense. I see the physical reality of them. I see the skin problems and I hear about the bloating and everything. So I was trying to explain it to her, just how different her lifestyle and diet has been, in the early stages of her life compared to ours. And she kind of nodded and said, maybe.
That's a great story. And quite possibly, when she was young, she wasn't getting antibiotics, 4 times a year. Her gut health, her microbiome was probably becoming robust at a very key, developmental stage. She was having that strong robustness there in her gut, which is now hopefully standing her in good stead for the rest of her life. But a lot of kids now are not having that start to life, so they are prone to a lot more of these things. And if anyone listening or watching this, the most effective tool that I have seen in 16 years of seeing tens of thousands of patients is an elimination diet. It is free. You don't need any tests, and you cut out, maybe with the help of someone like you, like a nutritional therapist, or if your doctor is knowledgeable enough to put you on that. It is amazing how many times that can clear up symptoms quickly, and then you get buy-in from the patient, and suddenly it's like, oh, right, so there's something in my diet that's causing my pains. There's something in my diet. So people often say, well, why don't you just cut things out one at a time? Well, I don't like that approach, because I find it's very hit and miss. I like to cut out quite a few things at once for like a 2-3 week period, get the patient feeling better, and then figure out by reintroducing what the problem with food is. And that's the approach that I find much more effective in practice.
Definitely, and one thing I have to emphasize up front is it's not forever. So some of them think, well, if this is the way forward, it's not worth living, So I have to emphasize that if we can fix the gut with all the other things, these foods can come back. Not all of them. Some of them will always be a trigger for you, possibly, like you've identified with yours. But and again, but it's amazing to hear you saying that. And I'd love it if GPs, because the process is long and it's something that probably a nutritional therapist is better working through. But if a GP gave that bit of advice to somebody, it could really make a big difference to their buy-in for, 4 pillars essentially as well.
Yeah, and one thing I'm just going to say in relation to a comment I saw a little while ago saying, well, there's plenty of websites with this free information, doctors can just go there to learn. I agree, right? I agree, but unfortunately that's not happening on a large scale, right? The other thing I would say with that is the course that we're putting on for doctors is, and it's not just doctors actually, I get asked that a lot. The reason why I don't think nutritional therapists should probably come on it is because I think you guys are already tuned into this way of thinking, so I'm not sure it would have that much value. But we are having a lot of nurses are now, coming on, because a lot of people go and see their practice nurse first, and a lot of nurses saying, can we come? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. Pharmacists are coming because we see all these patients, we're putting on all these medications. We want to help them get off those medications. So that's incredibly empowering for me. So we're not going to just replicate what is on websites. We're going to teach people the science. We're going to teach people how that applies to that patient when they're sitting there with you. Because it's not just for doctors to be able to apply this, they have to understand which patients to utilize which interventions for. And I know it may seem quite obvious, we'll just refer people to websites. But you know what? That's not happening at the moment. So I think there's going to be plenty of, I think the course has incredible value for people to learn. You know, I think it's going to help them not only get their patients better, I think it's going to help them increase their clinical satisfaction, which is why they became healthcare professionals in the first place. But I think for many of them, it's going to help them also improve their own health. My journey down this route of lifestyle medicine and functional medicine has absolutely mirrored improvements in my own health. Because once you learn this, the natural consequences, I'm going to apply it in my own life. Wow, I feel better. And then you're doubly motivated to talk to your patients about it because you know how quickly you can feel better.
I just thought, sorry, when I started to study, similar to you, like functional medicine, there's a lot of people in the fitness industry talking about this and saying maybe personal trainers have this role to be kind of doctors of the future by delivering, you know, kind of lifestyle medicine information. But I actually now see that maybe doctors are going to be the personal trainers of the future by actually giving a prescription of 100 squats, 16,000 steps a day. That would be amazing.
Well, look, I think it needs all of us, right? I think there's so many fantastic personal trainers out there that I've met, very, very knowledgeable, you know, really able to help their clients. And these are often patients who are, you know, frankly, struggling a bit with the conventional medical advice. And this is, you know, I do want to add, this is not anti-medicine, right? This is simply saying, I call this progressive medicine. I feel this is an evolution of how we practice, which is to recognize what we've been so very good at in the 20th century. Okay, look, we're really good at these problems, right? You know, if you're not down in the road, you want to go to a really good A&E and get the best that modern medicine has to offer you, right? But we also have to recognize actually what we're not so good at. That's not saying that we're not, that's just being honest. And that's the way we learn and we get better, is we say, actually, we're really good at these conditions. We're not so good at these. Can we learn some new tools that are going to help us with these conditions? That's what it's about for me. It's just about getting better. And as we get more knowledge, how can we not start implementing that? But we will absolutely need, Pam, look, I wish it would evolve quicker. It's a great comment. You know, and that's why, you know, Fitter Food, with all the resources they put out, that's why it's so fantastic. You can go and access things and actually empower yourself to get better. You know, but it will take as long as it takes. And, you know, as I say, you know, I know, like I was in London last week, and it was actually, what was I down for? Oh yeah, I was reading my audio book last week, which is quite a fun experience. And I bumped into two people who had basically reversed their type 2 diabetes on the back of watching my show and then reading one of my blogs. And I thought, wow, isn't this phenomenal that, you know, I feel so lucky as a human being that I've got the potential to impact people who I've never met, who, you know, in some way have been inspired by something and motivated to make some changes. And that's why I became a doctor. And I don't care whether it's reading my blog or your blog or anyone else's. I just want people to understand that they have a lot more control over their health than they might have thought. And I think the more that we can do, even this conversation, which we thought was going to be a 10-minute conversation, is probably going to be an hour, because frankly, I'm really enjoying this. I hope that's value for people watching.
I'm sure it is, mate, 100%.
I just thought it'd be amazing to see you on this morning, you know, when they do the phone in. That would be a really good role for you.
I've done it a couple of times, actually. I did it in 2016 at the start, and there's, I won't go into the reasons why I'm not doing it at the moment, but, you know, you got to, you know, as I said before, I'm passionate about trying to make a change, but I'm also want to be here. I want to pick my kids up from school. I want to play with them after school and do things with them. And, you know, the reality is I have now got to say no to a lot of things, and I do. And you know what? I used to feel bad about it. I now feel very okay with it. And, you know, I'm like, because I've realized that once I prioritize other people, that means I am in some way not prioritizing my kids and my wife. And I know that sounds quite harsh, but that's how I've had to look at it. And so now I find it a lot easier to say no. You know, I was meant to talk at a conference this Saturday in London. Really, really important conference run by someone who runs a cancer charity called Yes to Life.
I saw it this week, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, after this Facebook Live, I think they're coming up to interview me here, and they're going to play that interview at their conference. And the reason is because it's a Saturday. My kids are both at school. I've been away a lot recently. I am not giving up a Saturday to get on a train to London to speak at a conference, because that means then I'm not spending another Saturday with my kids. And so for me, I've made that choice. It doesn't mean that his cause isn't fantastic. It is. But you know what? I can't be at every event. And so this is a really nice compromise where they're coming out with a camera crew and they'll play it there. And it means on Saturday, I can be in the park, you know, clearing up leaves or doing whatever with my kids. So that's just a small way. But, you know, I still find it hard. It's just not as hard as it used to be.
But that's amazing, though, because that, for me, you know, it kind of, it's all part of the healthy lifestyle that you live, because, you know, we often say, you know, it's not, as you know, it's not just food, it's not just exercise, it's not just stress, sleep, etc., but also your relationships, you know, with your children, with your partner, with your friends. You know, it's such a huge part of a healthy lifestyle. And I think we often forget that, and often, and especially I'd probably say, you know, not to stereotype, but I'm sure many would agree. Like, I often see this with a lot of mums. You know, mums really kind of spread themselves too thinly, and they're so giving, which is amazing. But at the same time, their health pays a bit of a price. You know, they sacrifice their own health to give to others, which on the one hand, you know, you've got to admire. It's part of who they are. But then it's also really sad when you can see their health declining, if you know what I mean. So, and I'm sure
I'm seeing it with mums just like you. I think mums by nature are, you know, they're nurturing, they're giving. They often don't have time for themselves. And I have written down, you know, you talk about this lifestyle prescription. I have written down before, number 1, 15 minutes of me time every day. And I make them put it in their diary and schedule it in. And I don't have time. And I say, and again, I'm replicating a bit of the content in my book here, because the first suggestion I make for everyone is me time every day, and how important that is for our overall health. And I say, look, if you've done the school run, right, and your car broke down on your way, if let's say you were driving, your car broke down on the way home, what would happen? So, well, you know, I'd probably just end up waiting for an hour for the AA to come and fix my car. I said, yeah, and you know what? You'd probably still get everything you had to do done, because you just speed up and you get it done before school pickup time. I go, yeah, you're probably right. So I said, you will fill up your time with whatever you have to do. We know that as, you know, people who often work for ourselves. You know, if you've got 10 hours to do something, it will take 10 hours. If you've got 2 hours to do it, you'll get it done in 2 hours. So I said, you know, maybe after you've dropped your kids off to school, put in 15 minutes, go and sit in a coffee shop and have a coffee and, you know, read a book, or go for a walk, but make that a habit and just see how you feel in 7 days. And it is life-changing for people. You know, people think this is soft medicine. This is not soft medicine. This is real medicine. This is what is getting people better in 2017, where we live modern, stressed out lives. Right? This is the stuff that we need to know, all of us, to help people. We need to understand how important that stress response coming down is, how prioritizing time for yourself is. It's critical, and we really, really need it.
It's interesting you mentioned Yes to Life, because my driver for going into nutritional therapy was my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I took her to a talk by Yes to Life on what she could do with her nutrition and lifestyle, and very safe supplements like a little bit of zinc and things like that. It was an incredible talk, and it led me to kind of go and study nutritional therapy. But she has been my one client, I would say. They always say don't treat friends and family, but you do. I kind of intervened. She will do everything I say, nutrition, you know, supplements, and again, safe supplements. But the side of it that I've spent a good 6 years working on this, probably longer now, is she just will not prioritize herself. So it all flips. So, you know, when
copy of me and my mum, carbon copy. And actually, do you know what my mum said to me a few months ago? So how come you're going on TV and getting all these families and all these patients better? You know, you're not getting me better. like, Mum, that's because you're my mum, and I won't give you that information in the same way, and you won't hear it in the same way from me because of our personal relationship. But I will say that 4.5 years ago, when my dad died, I used to be a carer for my dad, along with my mum and my brother. My mum was on about, I think, 13 or 14 drugs and medications every single day for a whole variety of problems with blood pressure and pain, and she'd had knee replacements. She's now on 0 medication a day, nothing at all. She's doing incredibly well. The whole me time side of it, prioritizing herself, is something I have outsourced to somebody else now, because I've realized that I'm not the right person to go through that. And actually that's going incredibly well now that somebody else is looking after that, and it, independence of me. And I think it's a good lesson for all of us, actually, is that often the people closest to us are the ones we can't help in the ways that we wish to be able to help them. No comment there, but I could probably echo some of that.
I was like, because you made the transition before me, didn't you?
Yes.
On the kind of like the nutrition side of things, I was kind of like just one of those guys who just lifted weights, played rugby, and thought I could eat whatever I wanted, and I was quite reluctant.
He's good. He's a doubting Thomas, which helps me because I have to make sure I can explain everything and give justification and reasons. So it actually helps me that you doubt and don't just take everything I say as gospel. That just
devil's advocate.
Yeah, but then it gets annoying at times.
Guys, look, I'm really enjoying this conversation, but I think I'm going to have to wrap it up shortly.
We've really taken up all your time.
So. We just got carried away there, didn't we?
I've really enjoyed it, and I know we're going to do a podcast interview, which I'm looking forward to doing as well.
Would you let us know about the book very quickly? So when can people expect the book? Is it January?
Yeah, well, it comes out on the 28th of December. I'm very, very proud of it. I think it's going to help a lot of people. That's certainly my goal with it. I'm truly humbled with how many people have already bought it on pre-order. I literally can't believe it. I feel very, very lucky. And so, I really hope there's so many practical, actionable tips for people. And it's not about this is one way to do things. It's about trying to give people options. So I think, you mentioned veganism before. I think my food advice in the book will work for people, whether you're a carnivore or a vegetarian. I think the principles will still apply. I want this to be inclusive for everyone, for people who've got a disease already, for people who are trying to prevent getting a disease, or people who simply just want to feel a bit better in their everyday life. They just want a bit more energy and, have a bit more, a bit more thriving in their everyday life. So, we'll talk more about it on our podcast, I'm sure. But and just after Christmas.
Good stuff.
Well, mate, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And just one last thing before we go, so aside from obviously coming off of this live and going out there and pre-ordering your book, what's one thing you would love for everyone to do today to have a positive effect on their health? Just one thing.
One thing, you know what? It's a miserable grey day where I am. So I'm going to say I would love you guys to go and embrace the outdoors today. Go outside, get an umbrella or a brolly if you need to, but go outside, reset your circadian rhythm, which will help you sleep better in the evening just by getting outdoors. On a day like today, everyone wants to sit in, and I get that, but just go out, have a 10-minute walk. You will feel better.
Amazing.
Love it.
Awesome.
Great advice, mate.
And
guys, thank you everyone for tuning in. Loads of comments. I've never had this many comments on a live video ever. So many that we could never have got through them anyway, I don't think. But what we will do is there's some really great questions in there that we could potentially use for the podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you very much, everyone, for contributing there. Thank you once again, Dr. Chatterjee. It's been an absolute pleasure, buddy. And we will speak.
Hey, I'll tell you what, this has been so good. If the feedback is there from your audience, let's do it again sometime, because this has been
I'm sure it will be, mate.
Awesome.
Cheers, buddy. Speak to you very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.